Of Pastureland Ecology. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt.
Okay, thanks, Chris. And great to see such a good turnout. And this is actually my favorite subject. I realize I've been around for a long time and started out as a nutritionist and then got into grazing and stuff. And at some point became fascinated with the whole system and how all the parts fit together. And a lot of folks that I still deal with are cattle people, or maybe they're forages people, and they miss out. They don't see the whole system. And so I think it's a challenge for all of us to realize that there's a lot of complexity out there in these pastures, and there's a lifetime of learning to do about it. So that's kind of what I'm going to try to get us thinking on the right path, and then we'll see some of the more specific stuff as we go along. So. Again, I grew up kind of on a toxic fescue base there in Southern Virginia, and thought there was fescue, and then there's red and white clover, Chris, and that was about the extent of my upbringing in terms of pastures. But once we started getting into planting diverse mixtures and that sort of thing, started seeing all kinds of interesting insect benefits and that sort of thing, and so. There's a lot that I could talk about. This one picture of how all that is, and the cattle and the forage going together into what eventually will be a beef type product. And so lots going on there. So the Amazing Grazing Program has been around NC State since the late 1980s. I think 1987 is what we kind of decided is the formal beginning of that program. And really, the idea of that is rather than to get people to go out and do specific practices, which we do a lot of demos on bale grazing and stockpile fescue and stuff like that, but really the idea is to get people to go out and enhance their adoption of this better grazing management, or whatever you want to call it, simply because they're fascinated by the ecological system out there. And this is just after many years of trying to get people to do practices, we kind of found out, well, some of them really like a certain practice, they'll do it, and then later they kind of just fall back into what they were doing before, and they kind of look for another little neat, tricky thing they can try, and they don't never really get those things all incorporated into their big system. And so at some point, Johnny and I travel a lot, we talk a lot, and we just realized that the people that became deeply interested in the ecology, like Josh Teague, I'll just use you as an example. Then the practices become, some work for him, some don't, but he's not going to get discouraged and abandon stuff because he's got this deep underlying interest in the ecology that's going on out there. And so I think as we try to make a system that's going to last out a whole lifetime and maybe get young people involved, if we can build a system that is very ecologically sound, that really does work, and that there's lots of examples of the neat stuff out there, we can get others interested in these, and then we can turn them over, and maybe these will continue on for a long period of time. And so that's really our goal, is to enhance the adoption through creating interest in pastureland ecology. And so, Steve, we've had a lot of experience with this over the years. A lot of people have gotten jazzed and interested through this program, and so we will continue to do this for a long time. And so, again, just a picture of advanced grazing management. There are so many things in here that are going on that you have to think about, that experienced graziers, they tend to just go out and do what they're going to do, and they don't really think specifically about the different pieces of the system. And that's the way advanced people do. And so sometimes it's really hard to figure out, how did you know how far to move that fence or that sort of thing? But they're looking at a whole bunch of different things in the system at the same time. And to be able to do that, you've got to be out there on the land. So I'll say a little bit more about that. But again, looking at this picture, if you look at it and you see stockpile fescue, or if you see cows, you're missing most of what's going on, right? It's actually a complex system. There's dung beetles out there. There's earthworms. There's all sorts of interesting wildlife. Hawks floating around, and it's just it's fascinating once you start to see all that other stuff. So I also want to make a statement about the regenerative topic. We heard a lot about that from Jamie this morning. A lot of us read about regenerative grazing and kind of what it is. Chris and I both are kind of look in on some of these online Facebook chat groups on regenerative grazing. It's amazing. Josh, you're on there too. I know it's amazing sometimes how some of the stuff, the misconceptions and stuff that are out there. But the idea of this regenerative grazing or regenerative agriculture is just coming to the grips with the fact that this land is degraded. I mean, we have abused the land for a long period of time, and it was only recently that we really started to understand that the reason that we need to put a whole bunch of fertilizer on and maybe spray and stuff like that is that it's really not a functioning ecological system, and we have to use these patches, if you will, to make it productive. And you can do that. I mean, I grew up with lots of yield, lots of stockpile fescue, lots of stuff like that. But if we didn't put the fertilizer out, we didn't have much. So it was, it was a system that really needed to be fed, and so that's the problem. You can do a good job, but it takes a high level of input if your soil is very degraded, low in organic matter, which a lot of our soil is. So really, it's really based on applying the principles of building soil health. So all of those things that we know, plant diversity and making sure animals are out there, living roots in the ground all year round, and all of those principles of soil health are really what regenerative is all about. I mean, if you follow those principles, you will see your land improve over time. Now, some folks will abruptly give up the input. Some will gradually give them up, and I think, Josh, your advice about that is good, that, probably abruptly just quitting everything and then seeing how bad it is may not be the best approach. But certainly we can do away with a lot of these inputs as we build the soil health and we get to where we're ready to go without them. So the long-term goal is to regenerate this very high level of inherent productivity, and that is the goal, but it really takes this ecological approach to management. You just can't do this by a cookbook or something like that and really expect it to work. So you've got to get out there, do a lot of thinking, and be part of that ecology. So let's just back up a little bit. What even is ecology? And I think most of us know this, but let's review it. So it's really the branch of science that is concerned with the interrelationship of organisms and their environment. And so that's, again, pasture. Man, there's so many organisms out there, plant and animal, that are interacting and trying to understand how all that fits together is something we probably will never completely figure out, Chris. It's just too complex. But it is, the thing I want to stress is that pasture is called a managed ecosystem. And again, this is, one of the things you read a lot is, we're farming, we're just reproducing nature. We're just letting this be a natural system. And that's really not true, because it's a managed system. I mean, our human input is really, really critical to making this thing work. So it's not like a range. Even in the range, most people are doing some level of management. So it's not a natural system. It is a managed ecosystem. And that is a system where humans are they actively intervene and control key aspects of the environment. So again, to work right, the human has to be heavily involved, and that's the one thing where a lot of us get into trouble. So the way I was raised, this was about the complexity that I understood. I mean, there was cows out there, and I knew they were grazing fescue, and I was almost always out here, this being the fence. And that's kind of the way that I managed the whole times I was a kid. If I ever went in the pasture, it was probably riding a mower or riding a piece of hay equipment or something like that. There was very little on the ground out there with the way that I was raised and the way many of us have seen what's going on. Now we know now that there's a whole lot more going on out there, and this is a very simplified system. And you'll see a lot of these. This one could be improved probably, but it's worked pretty good for us over the years. But there's a whole lot going on underground. Things like dung beetles are, in our mind, the kind of a hook for people that there's a lot of interest in. But there's a whole lot of complex things going on in the soil that we work closely with Dr. Franz Lubers to try to help bring this part into our programming. And then there's a lot of stuff above the ground, the wildlife and certainly all of those other animals that are out there besides the cows. And so for those of you that are sheep or goat people or horses, this is the livestock. So anyway, they're in this case I kind of think cows. So that's where I go with that. So there's still something real broken about this picture, and that is that we're still in the wrong place. So where we belong is in the middle of that. So again, the sort of the vision that I keep for this, or the way that I think we need to think about it, is this is like, it's like directing an orchestra. Is one analogy I'll give you, where all of these parts are going on, and if you're out here outside the fence, you will never really notice it or see it. And so if you're here, both figuratively and literally, you're on the ground with the cows, with the plants, and you can start to see a lot of this stuff. And once you do, then you don't want to look at cows from out here. And it's something that it's interesting. I go to farms and I can tell a lot, when I start to walk in the pasture and the farmer's like, "What are you doing?" It's like, "Well, we're going to go look at pasture." He said, "Well, the cows are right here." So getting out there, getting on the ground is really the key to. I think that's the missing link that most of us have. So there's a lot of benefit. Of course, those of you that manage a pasture system from this location, tremendous amount of exercise that you do. I've got a lot of my family and friends that I get together with over the holidays. Like, for example, they were telling me all about all these workout routines that they do, and you can keep from getting old if you'll do 100 reps of 10 pounds and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, well, I just go out to the pasture and get just as good a workout as they do, and it's a lot nicer environment than what you could do. So, just kind of for me, the thing that really brought this to my mind was dung beetles. And so I say we're going to hear about dung beetles in more detail. They were a big hook for me, and I don't know how I never really noticed them. I know we had some, and once I found out how to find them and how to look for them, and then started studying on what causes problems with dung beetle populations, man, we've really got a lot more out there. And so if you don't have them or don't think you have them, this is a midsummer kind of picture. Anybody in the South or even up through the upper Midwest and the eastern part of the country, this is about a 24-hour-old cow pie, and you can find those out there. And if it's got this roughened up look on it, you can tell there's probably dung beetles there. This doesn't show up absolutely great, but there's probably 400 or 500 Onthophagus taurus in this one cow pie. And when they're like that, within about 3 days, there's just a shell. Now you'll read, some people will say, well, the cow pie completely disappears. Well, it usually doesn't completely disappear, but it does get completely disrupted. And there are a lot of channels. Each one of these dung beetles makes a pore underneath that cow pie where water can go in and help the whole system. We also know that those guys line those tunnels with manure. That stimulates other soil organisms, and really is very, very critical in the interrelationships of all what's going on in the soil. So again, just if you want to get a little kid interested in pasture ecology, take them out and show them dung beetles, get them some gloves, and get them out there and show them how to find them, and you'll find that they are attracted to that. And so we use that as a hook. The other thing that I think is important, and this is kind of my last slide, Chris, is we need to get the humans back involved in this system. And so this is a typical Amazing Grazing workshop, the real race. And people have done it a lot of time. Everybody that comes to our workshops, they're like, "Oh, I know which wheel I'm going to choose this time," right? So we demonstrate all kinds of things, from electric cord reels to the good quality stuff, and then we Josh, you'll like this one. This is that new Pins Agro reel. It's a disaster at a real race, so we do not use it because it will get tangled up every time. So there's some things that we learn these things through doing. And again, when folks come and they go through this kind of thing, they go home and they get them some reels and they get out there and they start doing something. So getting people actively involved and getting them to realize that this is such a cool place to be is really, I think, something that we all, whether we're farmers or educators or whatever, we got to mix in this room. Getting people's minds engaged in these pastures like this is very beneficial. So, Chris, with that, I'm going to turn it back to you.